Okay, welcome to today's edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'm Jim Cousins, along with the usual crew of Mike Terosian, Tom Nappy, Bob Hamilton, and Matt Clark. And this show, we're going to be talking for the first half hour with Laurel Coolbaugh from the Sanctuary at Woodville. And in the second half hour, we'll be having John Ritz as our host with Tim Kilduff and blanking on her name.
Jill?
Jill from the Hopkinton Runnings Club, and they'll be talking all things running. So, welcome to our show. We are live. Please feel free to visit our YouTube page and fill out comments or send us questions or comments via our email, studio@hcam.tv. But right now, Laurel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right. I hope that you are staying safe and well during this time.
We are, thanks to the Lord. We are. Yep.
All right. Good. Now, as we both know, we have some exciting things coming up together in the next 3 days. But before we get to that, Laurel, give us a little information for those who may not know exactly what's happening with the Sanctuary at Woodville down on Wood Street.
Great. I'd be happy to. So many people still know of the church as Woodville Baptist Church. In 2017, we changed our name legally. And we are a church. We have Sundays at the sanctuary, which is our typical worship time, usually with lunch to follow, a homemade lunch to follow. And we are also, we function as a Christian retreat and spiritual formation center, which just means that we allow our space to be used for people to come in from all different churches, all different denominations, and use the space either for personal retreats or for group retreats. And you can come and just have a time of quiet and prayer, or you can come and have a full-on conference with meals. My husband's the one who does the cooking, and he does a darn good job, actually. So we encourage people in this really busy world to come and get away and take some time of quiet, time of prayer, time of reflection. And as you know, those of you who live in Hopkinton, we are just around the corner from beautiful Lake Whitehall that has about 7 miles of hiking paths, and we also have kayaks and canoes on our property that you can wheel right down there and use that to be in creation and enjoy the space.
And you know, I've been inside there, and it is a beautiful building.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what's inside there?
Yeah, so you can go on our website, sanctuaryatwoodville.org, and do a virtual tour. It's a small church, small in terms of size, but very intimate setting. The sanctuary part of the building is very bright and lots of sunshine in there. We have many rooms that can be used for breakout rooms that have really comfy furniture, wingback chairs, stuffed furniture, couches. We also have a community room where people can have meals, also really bright, lots of windows. We have a game room downstairs set up for any groups that might want to use that as well. And then we have a nice sized kitchen too.
Now, how did you come across this concept?
Good question. Actually, so this is my 10th year of being a pastor at the sanctuary. And in my first year of being a pastor, I knew when they had offered me the job that the church was literally, it was dying. There were very few people. And really, I was praying about and looking into how might God want to repurpose this place and use it. The building was built in the mid-90s, so It's a nice new building. It was amazingly paid off, and it was joined to Wood Chapel, which is a historic building in town. And so I had gone actually this time of year, right after Easter. I went on a silent retreat. And in my time of praying and listening to God, I sensed that He gave me this idea for this vision of repurposing it. And then over the next 5 years, with the board, with the leaders, as well as with my husband, who is a stateside missionary and an entrepreneur, we devised a plan of how we might see if this would work. So my husband devised a marketing plan, and then we stepped out into it, kind of off the cliff, as they say. And it's been really wonderful, but it is a hard concept to get across because not many churches do this. So
Yes, it is unique.
yeah.
We've been talking on a few of our shows about what people are doing during this period of self-isolating and quarantining.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, since your husband does the cooking when you have events at your place, how have you been eating during this time? What's his favorites?
Well, actually, my husband hasn't done much cooking at all. And I am trying to be actually very careful with my diet these days, which is hard because I should say I want to stress eat. So I want to go to the comfort food, but I'm trying to be really careful. So we haven't done much cooking except for healthy stuff. And my husband is doing more takeout with our son than I think he has in a long time. So, yeah, so much for the cooking, Jim.
All right. So, Laura, what's your favorite comfort food?
Oh my gosh. Well, unfortunately, I'm a sweets girl. So I think it would be things like cookies, cake, and wonderful breads. All really high in carbs. So that doesn't work.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Tom Nappy just did kind of a poll on that, and he had to pick choices. And the one choice that got the vast amount of votes was carbs.
Yes. Amen to that.
All right.
And of course, just like many of the viewers and you all as well, my husband hasn't even been able to find flour when he's gone out grocery shopping until yesterday. Took him 3 weeks to score that flour. So
wow, it's
yeah,
it's really amazing.
it is.
There was a cleaning product that we use here that has been out for like 3 weeks, and it's just like a bathroom cleaner.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting how the supply chain has been disrupted.
It really is.
All right.
Yep. There's no cleaning products anywhere.
True.
It's crazy. I guess that's what everybody's doing while they're quarantining. That should be our poll, Tom. What are you cleaning?
Right, there you go. Or what are you using when you clean?
Right. That's a good question. I like that.
Yeah. All right. So, well, I want to get right into this. I'm so excited. Now, if people haven't seen already on our channel or through various media, we have a very exciting couple of events that have never happened before that will be happening on HCAM. And before you tell us exactly what those are, Laurel, take us all the way back. And how did you come up with it? Because you approached me about this. Where did this idea come from? And take us through the evolution of it.
Okay, so I met with you maybe a year or two ago, Jim, I forget.
Yep.
When you started the community, what do you call it?
Community communications group.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
And talked with you about different things that you could do or you could help us do at the sanctuary. So you wonderfully explained a lot of that. Because I'm a sole pastor and I don't have an admin person, and I'm also kind of low tech. I understood the concepts well, but it's hard for me to get to those things. So it's been in the back of my mind that I'd like to do more through HCAM. So every year, those again who are in Hopkinton probably know that the churches in town offer an ecumenical Good Friday service. And it happens to be one of my favorite services of the year because Hopkinton is unusual in New England in that we have a wonderful clergy collegiality. I've been in other towns where that really isn't the case. And so we really look forward to meeting together. And when we did, we had our planned meeting the first week that the self-isolation started. So, of course, we met by Zoom as pastors. And because everybody was getting, trying to transition into this new way of thinking, the pastors were thinking, well, I guess we can't do this year because we can't do it live. And some of the churches in town are already set up for live streaming, but many of us aren't. And so that was when the idea came to me, why don't we talk to Jim and see if HCAM can do this with us and for us so that we can actually reach those in town and even beyond. It just seemed to me like this was a fabulous opportunity for the clergy to lead the town in coming together the best that we can to celebrate these holidays of Holy Week, during Holy Week and Easter. So I reached out to you, Jim, and you were like, yes, we can do this. And so that started us putting together a modified version of our typical Good Friday service, as well as a few of the churches in town who, again, don't have live streaming capability at this point, came to you and said, can we do an Easter service this way? And once again, you said a resounding yes. So we were so excited. And this is especially important to me and to, I think, some of the churches that don't have that live streaming capability, because we tend to have smaller congregations and we tend to have more elderly congregations. And often a lot of our elderly don't have either a smartphone or a computer. So they really don't have good ways to come together with community and worship. But they do have cable. And so they can actually worship with us through HCAM, through the cable channel on both Good Friday and Sunday. So I just feel so happy to know that this can be offered for people with all sorts of technology or lack thereof to be able to come together and worship.
Yes, excellent. The first thing I want to say is that clergy collegiality is the phrase of the day. That just has such a nice ring to it. I really like that.
It does.
And when you are talking about the clergy in our community coming together, I'm not sure, is that a Barnabas Ministries group or something different?
It's actually broader than Barnabas. Of course, I think we all know that Pastor Dick Germain is kind of like the father of the town in terms of everybody's pastor. At least that's how I think of him. And then he's the one who started, most people know, Barnabas Ministries. But even if the clergy are not in a Barnabas group, they're still part of the town clergy. So basically, the town clergy includes anyone, any pastor or priest or father or bishop who, leads a congregation. So it includes all the different denominations in our town, including Catholic.
Yes. So that's really cool. And wanted to say that the reason I was so excited when you first approached me was because when everything came down, when many businesses had to shut down, quarantine, self-isolate, it was a real crisis for us because we're in the community so much. And not only are we unable to be out there as much, there's also so much less to be able to cover. And we really thought long and hard about what to do. And that's how this whole concept of the Hangout Hour came about. We're live 2 to 3 every day. We're really encouraging anybody in the community who would like to join us, to have a conversation, to just go ahead and do that. There's something special about live TV when you know that when you're spending your time watching that, that's the exact time that all of us here are actually doing this.
Yeah.
So to do a service, both the Good Friday service and the Easter service live, people can really feel a connection there. And that is what I find so exciting.
Especially maybe as never before during this time, right? This is our way to connect, and we can do it live, which is great.
Right. We have to take a quick question here. Tom is monitoring our social medias, and he's got something to share.
Well, somebody on our YouTube, or a good friend John Ritz, wants to know, once the crisis is over, can you see more of, could you see the church and HCAM combining more to air some of these services?
I would love that. And yes, especially now that, I'm getting my feet wet, and working with Jim, I could easily see doing more of this. I personally hope we do, because I know I have a real passion for the whole kingdom of God. I'm not just about a denomination, but really wanting to work with other churches. So I hope we can do more of that. And I hope we can have more of this opportunity, because as we know, you can reach more people than will necessarily come into your building on a given day. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Yes. I've heard in the past, one of the pastors that I've had was talking about not only did any person who would attend the church for the first time had visited the website to try to find out, kind of get the lay of the land and see what's going on, but often the hardest step is to step through that door.
So true.
It is. And so, so they tried really hard to be welcoming and understanding. At the same time, I find that I've always felt this way, is sometimes you have the gift of evangelism and sometimes you don't. And that's not really my gift. So I try to help the church that I'm in by doing video, because I've always felt that the easiest place for people to hear about religion is in the comfort of their own home. Many times, if you approach somebody, they would kind of react like, what are you going to try to convert me? You're going to try to make me do something. What do you want from me? But when you're at home, all those guards are down, and the person can just listen to what is being presented. So I find that to be very valuable. I'm doing my church's streaming services during this time period too. And it's so fun to be standing there and you see like all the people who are watching, and you just know that every number is just somebody else who is getting this information.
Right. I have a pastor friend in Southbridge, and she's been live streaming. Well, actually, I guess through Facebook Live, her teachings on Sunday, and it's fun because she said, "I'm getting people from London, England, um, you know, coming in and listening. How is that? And and she said somebody from Boston. I have no idea who it is. So it proves your point, Jim, that people are they're less, it's less nerve-wracking to come into or to be in your living room and test out a place and listen and see what you think. Even on chat, to ask questions instead of doing so in person, I think it's just less threatening.
Yes. Yep. And this time of doing this show and of doing these events has been very, very illuminating for all of us here. And it has definitely made an impact that will not be going away.
Yeah.
I really do miss graphics. I do miss, a 3-camera studio and really good sound. But there is a place for this as well. And even when we're back in the studio, and even when we're making our shows, there will be a spot for us to do something like this. It's just too good to miss. I really, really love connecting us this way.
Yeah, I do too. I'm so grateful that you all have the know-how to do it.
Mm.
So thank you.
It's been a learning curve, but we are learning.
It is definitely not my gift. So thank you.
Right. All right. Now, so Good Friday service tomorrow
Yes.
at noon.
It's at noon live, exactly, and we're really looking forward to it. Uh, Not as many pastors in town can be involved this year, but they are all supportive. Um, Bob Cloutier from Faith Community reached out to all of them to invite them to be a part and see if they could join us on Friday through HCAM. And many of them couldn't because they didn't have the bandwidth at this point. They're all trying to figure things out too in this time of pandemic. And some are very overwhelmed, understandably so. I think because I have a smaller congregation, it isn't quite as much of a stretch for me. I can talk to people on the phone, make sure needs are met, and I'm still doing my Bible studies, etc. But anyway, all of the pastors and Father Cannon, they're all very supportive of this. But we probably have, I think, 5 of us represented leading the service tomorrow for Good Friday, which will be great.
How long do you expect it to be? And could you tell us any of the elements that you anticipate seeing there?
Absolutely. We're thinking it's going to be 45 minutes, and we do have a musician who's going to lead us in a few songs appropriate for Good Friday. We have some of the typical scripture readings, however, we've shortened them up, such as Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53, just portions of that. And we'll have the message, certainly. Typically, when we've done this when we've done this in person, we do the rite of reconciliation, which is more of a responsive reading. However, that's a little tough to do this way, so we aren't going to do that this year. But yeah, I think everything else will feel pretty normal in terms of like our regular service, just a bit shorter, which usually makes people happy.
All right. So noontime tomorrow, and tell us about Easter service on Sunday.
Easter service Sunday will be at 10:30 a.m. live, and it will be the Community Covenant Church, Bruce Johnson, the pastor there, and St. Paul's Episcopal, who right now they don't have a rector, but Sue Ramsley is leading the charge there right now. They have been getting pastors or priests to fill in weekly. So we will have myself from the sanctuary, and Bruce and Sue and another woman from St. Paul's, who will be helping to lead in worship. And then Bruce's church, Community Covenant, they have a great worship team, and they have already pre-recorded some worship music for us for Easter Sunday, which will be great.
Yeah, that's really good. That's
Yeah.
really good. So I just have to tell you that we're so looking forward to this, and really thank you for your leadership in making this happen and encouraging everyone. I have seen a gazillion emails from you.
Yes, you have. Sorry about that.
No, I'm glad to get them. Glad to get,
Thank
because
you.
this is our first time doing it, so we're really
Yeah.
excited to pull this off. And
Yeah.
I'll be in the background, but just so you know, and everybody else there who is listening to us should know that Bob and Matt are really linchpins on this.
Great.
They each call into different computers in the studio to make these shows happen, to switch them over and get them started, get the live stream started. So there's usually like 3 people on the tech team for every show that we're doing here.
Wow. Well, I thank you all for your work in advance. Yeah,
All right. And I know I'll be seeing you later on today for our rehearsal and run through.
that's right. Looking forward to it.
All right, Laurel, thank you so much for joining us. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. All right. Now, if Matt is on, he will pop on. I asked him if he's ready to give us an insider. While I'm waiting for that to happen, I just want to mention a new thing that's happening tomorrow night. So, in addition to Good Friday service and in addition to our Easter Sunday service, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock here, we're having a special hangout show, and it's the return of 2 features that were scheduled to be on our Wake Up and Smell the Poetry show. They'll be coming back on at 7 and 7:30 to share their art with us, and Cheryl Peralt will be hosting those episodes too. So we're all very excited about that. And Matt, I see you're here now. Do you have? I previewed the Wake Up, Smell the Poetry. Do you have any other things you want to share about what's coming up?
Yeah, of course. Excuse me. Well, tomorrow we have Margie Wiggin and Kelly Grill coming on for the live stream. We obviously have the Cheryl Peralt show tomorrow night, which we're all very excited for. Coming up next week, we're going to have Amy Beck and Ashley Shaheen from the Senior Center talking about what they're doing over there. That's on Monday. And we're also going to be having Dan Norton and the boys lacrosse captains talking about what they're doing in this time, because they're supposed to be practicing right now, but obviously there isn't any practice. So it's going to be an exciting week.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
And we're just about to turn. We got a couple more minutes before we turn to our running show. In fact, the host has just arrived, and one of our guests, Tim Kilduff, has just arrived. So I am going to move them from the waiting room into the show. And I'm going to say welcome to John and welcome to Tim. They're getting their footings here.
Second, there we go.
Okay. Hi,
There we
John.
go.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I see Tim is here and he's connecting his audio. How you doing? Oh, Tim, unmute your microphone. There we go. I got it for you. Oh, come on.
There you go.
I almost got it. All right, click on the mic. You got the mute on your microphone, Tim. Oh,
How's that?
hello. How you doing?
You know, no one's ever said unmute your microphone to me.
Oh, no kidding. How about that?
That clearly is a first.
All right.
I just say Tim has the best background.
I know. You know what? I would say that mine's good too, because I have technology going here, but that is a really, really good background. I do have to admit that.
What are you sitting in, a jungle?
No, it's grass. I'm very small today. All right. So John is the host. So we are going to step back. John, we're still waiting on the second guest.
Jill.
Yep. Whenever she arrives, I'll just usher her into the show.
That's great.
Okay?
All
All right, guys. Have a great time. I'll see you on the other side.
Thanks. All right. right. So today we're going to talk about all things running and how the current situation has impacted running. Obviously, Tim, the marathon's been impacted by this and delayed. Can you talk a little bit about, how that delay happened, what the considerations were for moving it out?
I used, that's an important question. I used the word unprecedented recently in a conversation with somebody who doesn't live in this part of the country. And I was chastised, and he said, I've heard that word a lot recently. But the fact is, in terms of the Boston Marathon, the action of the mayor of the city of Boston, the governor, the 8 cities and towns, in conjunction with the BAA, to postpone the race when they did was unprecedented. This would have been the 124th Boston Marathon, consecutive annual marathon. And they've really, they made that decision early on, very, very strong. The governor is going to put forth legislation to create a holiday on September 14th, which is a Monday. So if you really think about what that group of people did, it really is unprecedented. Pretty exciting. Go ahead.
Why a Monday? Why not take this opportunity to put it on a weekend when you'd have, you don't have to make a state holiday in addition to everything else that's going on?
You know what? We could argue that a lot, but again, I think it's out of respect for that 123 years.
Yeah.
We don't have, somebody put it this way, we don't have Major League Baseball is not only Boston, National Football League, but the Boston Marathon is it. It's, the governor used the word crown jewel, and he's right. It is. It was the rite of spring. I suppose it'll be the rite of fall this year. I believe that the crowds will be bigger than ever. Yeah. There's going to be all this pent up energy, and I think it's going to be a great way to head into the fall. Obviously, we sit here with great hope and anticipation that, in fact, it will happen in September, and I continue to think it will be.
Okay. Now, when you talk about it being a fall marathon, I'm going to claim a certain, I don't want to call it fame. I ran in the other Boston Marathon, which was run one time and it was a fall marathon. It was an opportunity. It was an attempt to create a second marathon in Boston. It ran like New York, entirely within the city limits. It turned out to be such a huge logistical mess that they only ran at the one time. So I know a little bit about fall marathons, but the other major marathons, Chicago and New York, I think there's a third one, are in the fall. So now the BAA is competing for the elite runners. Is that going to be an issue?
That's a very, very good point, because as you know, these marathoners, the elite marathoners, have contracts long before, well in advance of the marathon, and most of those elite runners that we're going to run in Boston in April probably have commitments in the fall. And you also had, don't forget, you had the Olympics that were going to be squished in the middle of all of that. That'll be put off, but there's competition for that. But the exciting part to me is we have some, the 26.2 Foundation has 65 invitational entries to the race. We have not heard from one, and we communicate on a very regular basis with these 65 runners, on a weekly basis, actually. We have not heard one person. No one's reached out to us to say, we're not going to run. Yeah. That's pretty exciting. Now they have time to make that decision, but we keep talking to those runners and about, we'll see you in September. Yeah. Hope to greet you in person. So pretty strong sign. I think they had about 31,000 runners scheduled to run. and it will. It might not be the strongest elite field in the world, but there'll still be 35,000 people coming to the line in Hopkinton.
Oh yeah, and that's an interesting point about the Olympics. I wonder if that's going to free up some of the higher end runners who might otherwise have skipped Boston so that they could train for.
That would have had an impact. So you can rest assured that the John Hancock and the BAA have reached out to people. But again, this is so enormous. What the creation of the holiday, the 31,000 people, being Boston, 124 years, pretty big story in and of itself.
Oh yeah. I've seen for the first time the BAA has offered refunds to runners. Do you have any sense of how many people have asked?
I'm betting. No, I don't know the exact number, but I can only tell you about the runners that the 26.2 Foundation is involved with, and there is no one as of today that has said, you know what, I'm going to defer and I'm not going to run. That's pretty encouraging. We're excited about that, and I think you're going to see that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of moving it later. Is now when do the prep for the spring for the April marathon usually starts in September?
Yes.
Sounds like you're going to go right up against that, or is it going to overlap? Is that shortened time going to be a problem?
I think that's one of the challenges for people who have been on a training program, and that we're this is what a week, two weeks out before almost 10 days before the Boston Marathon was scheduled to be run. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, people would have been doing their long runs.
Yeah.
That stopped people short. So the runners themselves, and it all depends on obviously the individual and how they train, but they'll start that regimen again. They probably took some time off. They'll start the regimen of having longer runs now. My contention is that if people really pay attention to their training, they'll be more prepared. It's always tough to train for Boston, particularly if you live in New England through the winter months. So this is in terms of training, and people will be prepared. It's likely to be warmer, and they'll prepare for that. I just, it really is to me one of the more exciting things in marathon in the history of the Boston Marathon, and it has an impact on Hopkinton as well. Changing dates, they're filling up. There are other road races now that are trying to shift, and they're going to be overlapping. There are going to be multiple races on weekends, and they'll be all competing for runners a lot regionally. So we have other events in Hopkinton. I mean, Poly Arts, for example, which was, I think, scheduled to be on that weekend, is been pushed out a week later. So it does have an impact. We were hoping to unveil a sculpture of Bobby Gibb, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. We were shooting for prior to this. In fact, it might have been even this week, actually. That obviously had to be postponed. We're looking at a date in May, and I'm thinking now that might even be pushed out. But that sculpture is sitting in the foundry, ready to be sandblasted and polished up. So we have those dates we have to be flexible with those.
Now, who's making that sculpture?
Bobby Gibb herself is a sculptor, is an artist, and it's a self-sculpture, and it is our charge to her was to try to capture. There's a very famous photo of her coming down Boylston Street. She, that morning, grabbed a pair of her brother's shorts, put a swimsuit on, and tucked her hair behind her, and that's the image with the clothing, and we want it to reflect what happened 52, 53 years ago. And I think she's done that. I've seen the sculpture just a few weeks ago in its very rough form. And I think we have captured a memorable moment in marathon history.
And where, once again, where is that?
Where nothing's easy, right? And there's this big project in Hopkinton called the down Main Street Corridor Project. We've gotten the approval with from the Historic District Commission to place it on private property right on the corner of Main Street and Hayden Row.
Oh, great.
That's probably the most historic house in Hopkinton. And we worked very closely with the Historic District Commission, and they nodded their head and gave us approval to put it there within the historic district, which is, again, a big deal. And that essentially is on a little rise that overlooks the starting line of the Boston Marathon.
Yeah. So the 26.2 Foundation.
Yes.
A little opportunity to talk. Is any of this impacting your plans on the museum?
Well, the only impact is that town meeting has been moved. Let me give you just a little quick backdrop. The town issued an RFP for property right about a half a mile to 0.6 of a mile down the course. It used to be Western Nursery property. It was part of the whole Legacy Farms. The town issued an RFP for 19 acres to build an international marathon center. We submitted a very, very aggressive and detailed response. The selectmen said, okay, but we have to negotiate a lease between ourselves and the town, which will then be approved by town meeting. That town meeting has been moved. I think it's the 22nd of June.
Yeah.
So we are now in the throes of doing what we would normally do, pulling the appropriate materials, background information, developing very extensive question and answers. And as soon as we get a break here, we're going to start vetting all of that out throughout the community. Hoping HCAM will give us a little time to talk about the project in total leading up to town meeting. And we'll start reaching out. We've already done some work with Parks and Rec and the Select Board, but there are other groups in town like the Running Club and so forth that we want to give a full briefing to. So that's the only difference.
Okay. So I had hoped to have Jill from the Running Club on to talk about the local running. Are you hearing anything from, hang on a second, I'm seeing something on my chat. Oh, interesting. A question came in, do you know if John Hancock will still do the Elite Kenyan Runners Day at Elmwood?
Good question. Don't know the answer to that. It's going to be a jam-packed week. That's the week after Labor Day. And I'm sure John Hancock is at work building that elite field. And it'll be interesting to see if the schedules can be worked out. I don't know when school goes back. It's going to be a tough week, tight week.
All right. Let me see if I can share this. So do we know if runners are having to do something like this yet?
I don't think so. I mean, it's one of the challenges I was noticing recently in New York is people were getting out and maybe flooding's an inappropriate word, but crowding the areas where they run along the Hudson River and so forth. No, we haven't seen much of that, but every chance we get, we want to encourage people to do exactly what we've been asked to do. And now that includes wearing a mask.
You had
So
marathon prep. Anybody who was getting ready for April in Boston had to put their plans on hold, restart. And as you said, it's going to be a different prep for Boston. You're used to prepping and running in the winter in the cold, and now it's going to be a warm weather prep leading up to a fall marathon. So that'll be interesting for them.
It will. You know, I'll tell you one of the challenges that we're starting to hear about, and that is the hotels in the area, in Boston in particular. There are, I'm sure, there are conventions or big meetings that are already planned for September. Now, to me, that's an exciting opportunity for Hopkinton. In 2010, Hopkinton hosted 100 marathoners from Greece. And when I say hosted, I mean they were housed in, by families in Hopkinton and Ashland surrounding communities.
Yeah.
I don't want to have anybody panic yet, but you know, this might be a wonderful opportunity because housing is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So we're looking at whether or not we can initiate another initiative like that, particularly for the runners that are running for, you know, the runners that are running for the town of Hopkinton numbers, with the town of Hopkinton numbers are probably local, but we want to, this is an opportunity to extend a welcoming hand. So we're taking a look at that at this point. In terms of, and I argue this point all the time, our window, our community's window is basically 364 days a year in terms of the marathon. And I jokingly, I haven't said it directly to Mayor Walsh yet, but I, with a smile on my face, always say that the spirit of the marathon resides in Hopkinton and we lend it out once a year. But I'm prepared to argue that point. You know, if you look at the connections we have through the Brown family, who kept the race going for years, were major leaders in that, not only in marathoning, but in sports like hockey, the sculptures, the Elmwood Day, all of these kind of things. And by the way, the marathon school, I'll take that argument on.
Absolutely. I like the idea of extending the marathon village to include the entire town and housing. I like the thought of Hopkinton being the place where the majority of the runners stay before the marathon. We can reverse all the school buses. They'll come from Boston. I like it.
I think it's going to be, I just think it's a hoot. A Monday in September, statewide holiday. Come on.
That'd be fun. I do know the running club, just preparing for this, they have canceled their Saturday runs. And I've talked to a couple of other runners that are saying, you know, they will not run in a group of more than 3 now anymore. And even then they try to distance themselves. And I think it's got to be a whole different world for people running.
It is, you know, and this is another opportunity to sort of pat that group on the collective back. That's turned into, I think, what running clubs should be like. I mean, it's collegial, and they do their training runs and they do social activities. They maintain connections both through running and socially. I think it's the Hopkinton Running Club is a real asset to the community. The work that they do on the Timlin race, for example, is another one. They support that, and then the other activities that they're involved in. And I use the word throwback. I do not mean in any way other than positive, but that's the way running used to be. The way they conduct themselves and the collegiality of that group. That's the way running was before when the running boom really started to take off. So we're glad to have them, and it's another. It speaks to the vibrancy of the community again. There are a lot of good things that are happening in Hopkinton, and that's one of them.
I like how inclusive the descriptions for their Saturday morning runs are, from the painfully slow to the insanely fast, or something along those lines. And they're sort of open for all levels. They just want people out and running. The Timlin Run, now that's set for June 20th. Their website says they're sort of keeping an eye on things, and hopefully they can still keep that going at that date. By then, things will be over enough that we can gather a group. But I know that's a huge fundraiser for.
It's another example. There's another good example of something that was started, very noble cause.
Yeah.
And I used to tease Abby Rosenberg, who, as you know, was really the founder of that race. I used to tease her all the time. And Abby, you raise, I forget what is it, a couple $1 million now?
Oh.
When she raised $100,000, I said, you don't know anything about road racing, and you just raised $100,000. That's a very unique, again, that not every road race does what they do.
No.
A lot of road races in the area, but very few have been as powerful in terms of fundraising and impact as they have been.
And the family they do right after the race, that's great. That pulls in people who aren't necessarily runners that just want to come for that, and it is a great event for the town every year.
I think looking ahead a bit, if we might, I think what all of this says about Hopkinton is that running in the vibrancy of the community, it creates a platform. It creates a platform for Hopkinton that spills over into things like economic development. We're centrally located, and we know all about that. We're centrally located, but this is a very vibrant community. And if you look at communities in the area, the sense of pride that we have, but also the interest that we have in a healthy living, is just sort of multiplied by the kind of things that you're talking about. The running club, the Timlin race, of course, the connection to the marathon, but we have activities going on. The number of road races, I don't think you and I could even count them right now.
No.
The number of sort of athletic activities that happen in Hopkinton.
Yeah, just recreation in general. I know Peter Lagoy is a runner in town.
Oh, yeah.
He just got a notice in the newspaper as being one of the 3 people in the world that's run a marathon in 6 separate decades. He just turned 60 and ran another one. But he's had an idea or been talking for a while about Hopkinton as he calls it destination recreation, because you look around, we have the running, we have the lakes, we have fishing, we have boating, we have rock climbing. I'm with the Trails Club. We have hundreds of miles, it seems, of trails in town. So pretty much anything someone wants to do recreation-wise, you can come to Hopkinton and find it here.
I think you're right in that the Trails Club is another example of what we're talking about. And the potential to connect these trails in Hopkinton, it's really exciting. One of the things we're looking at on the property on which we hope to build an international marathon center is to create, part of that area will be dedicated to creating a trail hub. So we can start connecting those trails that you know far better than I do, that ultimately could lead to Ashland, Southborough, Milford. It's on and on and on.
Yeah, I know several people that love that. It seems they spend most of their time out running on the trails and either running on established trails and connections or making their own connections and then sending me messages about, hey, I found a great new way to run from here to here. So yeah, the more you can do with those hubs.
I've got a question for you. Where is there a map, an area, someplace, town hall somewhere, where we can get sort of an overview of where these trails exist? Does that exist anywhere?
Yes and no. The Hopkinton Trails Club webpage has, we've got maps of most of the trails in town. What I use a lot is an open source database called Open Street Maps, where people just hike the trails and log their route and say, here's where a trail is. There are several initiatives going on in town right now, spearheaded by the new TCMC, Trail Coordination and Management Committee, to pull together exactly that. There's an old adage that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So step one is to get a combined list of all the open space in town, all the trails, and be able to say, oh, this is what we have. Now we can see we need a trail connection here, and we need to buy this piece of land here. So they are working on that. And that's Peter Lagoy again.
Is it?
Yeah, Peter is all things trails, and when it comes to town.
He's, you touched on his, the six marathons in 6 decades.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gotten enough notoriety. That's really quite phenomenal. And he's an understated gentleman. He doesn't run around with a sign on his back.
No.
He's another example, and he puts some energy back into doing volunteer work in the community. And he's a very, very, as you know, a rather strong advocate for trails.
Yeah, he spearheaded at least 3 of the trails in town: the Center Trail, the Echo Trail, and the new Hughes Trail that's going in there. Those were all developed under his direction. So we owe a lot to Peter. Trying to think what else we want to touch on. I was wondering about all the new runners that we're seeing that are coming out because of this. I have a pair of running shoes in the basement that I keep saying, I think I need to bring those out and start running again. And people are looking for ways to get out of the house now. So I think we're seeing more of those folks out on the streets.
Yeah, maybe what we can do is think about collaborating with the Hopkinton Running Club and HCAM and the 26.2 Foundation and Peter Lagoy and others, and maybe we ought to think about formulating a little bit of a training program for those newbies to the roads.
I've been joking that we need a training program for people who can no longer go to the gym and all they've ever done is run on a treadmill, and say, this is what it's like when you actually move when you run. So new experience for those folks. All right, I think we've hit everything we have. I'm sorry we didn't have Jill on. I would have loved to have had her perspectives from the running club, but thank you so much, Tim, for joining us today and sharing what you have.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. We love HCAM. We love what you guys do. So as I tell Jim Cousins all the time, keep doing what you're doing.
All right. And we'll definitely be working with you on the museum. I'm looking forward to seeing some programs where you can show that off to the community.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Jim, where are you?
I'm here. That was a great show. Thank you both for your time.
Jim, don't, we're trying to be a little complimentary, but you remember in addition to keep doing what you're doing,
yeah,
you can work a little harder too.
All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Take care.
Yeah, Jim.
All right, John, great job. Thank you very much for stepping up and hosting this episode.
No problem.
All right. And thanks, everybody, for watching this episode of the Hangout Hour. We hope that you will tune in for more guests and more chat and more of you in the coming days. Take care.